Hello and welcome everyone. And thanks for tuning into today's IEEE CMRT live webinar on career guidance. I'm Vaibhav, Secretary of IEEE CMRT Student Branch. And I'm very excited to welcome our speaker for today's webinar. And that is Ms. Anushka, who is currently working as Associate Software Developer at Illusion and who is also alumna of CMRT. So before we start, we have some instructions for audience where we'll be running a live Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So if you have any questions, you're free to ask them in the chat box. And we'll be sending a short link to all the registrants after this event. And would love your feedback and would appreciate it if you could take a few minutes and share your thoughts. So without wasting any time, I'll pass it off to our speaker for today, Miss Anushka. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining in for the webinar. I'm your speaker for today. My name is Anushka Jemima. And the main agenda for today's webinar will be a career development plan and placement preparation. So these are the two topics that I'm going to be touching on today. Just to talk about myself a little bit before I start off, I currently work as an associate software developer in Illusion. And as was mentioned, I did my engineering from CMR Institute of Technology, and I did it in electronics and communication. And yeah, and now I've started working for Lucene as a software developer. I'm going to go ahead and start. Now, before I start off, there is one thing that, of course, I'd have to mention is that whatever I talk about from here on is completely based on my experiences and my journey throughout to get this job and what I've wanted to do, and all of this is completely based on my experiences. So I cannot lay a path down or tell you all what would be the right part and what would be the wrong part. I can only tell you what I did, what worked for me, and I would suggest you all try to grasp and pick up whatever you all can from this, so that whichever works better for you and which doesn't work better for you is something that you will have to try to understand. I can only tell you all what worked well, and we can move on from there, right? So if that's clear, I'm going to start off talking firstly about the career development plan. Now, this career development plan is something that, of course, you can do at any stage, but it's suggested you all start now because it's a good time to start. And I'll be covering three main steps that I used in my career development plan. Of course, this is like from a number of courses that has been taken and talking to various people in the industry, something that these are things that I've picked up on, which helped me in building my career development plan. So that's the main thing about a career development plan. You can, one important thing to remember is that you will have to keep updating your plan. You cannot just set one plan and, keep that going on forever. You'll have to keep updating it maybe once in 6 months or a year, or if when you're changing your job, or if you find something else that interests you, so on and so forth. All right. So the three steps that I said I would talk about is firstly reflection, research, and review. Before I'm going to go into the first step now. Now, in your first step of reflection, there are three questions that you would have to list out your answers to. I would actually prefer doing this entire career development plan with you all as you all do it as I'm talking. But the thing is, this plan would require a certain amount of time, and you would have to be in a good mindset. You should have to have a clear mindset. So I would say take 1 or 2 hours before you start your career development plan. And that's when you'll be able to have a clear idea on what you want to put down, and you'll be able to think properly and, of course, do your research too. So, of course, I'm sure this session is going to be recorded and they will send across to you if you want to refer to it later on. The first part, reflection. Under reflection, there are three questions that I would suggest you answer. The first one would be a list of things that you're good at. Now, when I say a list of things that you're good at, here I'm not just talking about the programming languages that you're good at or the frameworks that you're good at Of course, you can list them down. You list out that you're good at Java or you're good at Python. But when I say list of things you're good at, you also have to lay focus on the soft skills that you're good at. You will have to lay focus on if you're good at, if you have good presentation skills, if you have good communication skills, if you have good leadership skills. Those are the kind of things that I would expect you all to list out in the first step. So list of things you're good at. Of course, you list out that you have, you're good at a certain programming language and so on. But you'd also have to list
Excuse
out
me,
if you're, yeah.
and the session isn't recording.
Yes, we are recording. We are using an external application for that. So,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So the list of things that you're good at would have all of that in it. On not only it would have to have your soft skills along with various other skills that you feel that you're good at. This can go to 10, 12, however long you want to list it. That's perfectly okay. The second step would be the list of things that interest you but you haven't yet explored. So there may be certain things that you would have heard of, that you would have seen on social media, certain job roles, certain areas that you find very interesting when you've heard of it, but you've never explored it, you've never gone deep into it, you don't know what actually goes into getting into that job or doing that. That's what you would have to list out in your second step. This can be getting into let's say you have interest in app development, or you have interest in things like game development, or you're interested in event management, those kind of things. So that's what you list out over here. These are things that interest you but you still haven't explored. The third step would be how you want to feel in your current or next job. So what I would say is few of y'all may have done internships. They may have been good, they may not have been good. Few of y'all may have not at all done internships. This is your first step into the entire corporate world. Uh, Irrespective of that, you need to list out what you want to feel in that job environment. Do you want to have an environment where you're working on a certain particular technology? How, what kind of technologies do you want to have? How do you want that to impact your career and your career plan and where you want to see yourself in the future? Or it can be uh, do you, are you a person who works, you want to work in a team, or those kind of things. That's what you'll have to list out here. You want a job that has continuous learning, or that's based only on a certain set of technologies. So that's what I would say you list out on how you want to feel in your current or next job. Another thing I'd mention here is, of course, there may be people who are really interested in the whole coding and programming side of things, and you want to go deep into it. There may be people who are interested but they don't want to do it. They don't want to go completely deep into getting into a developer role as such. There are roles otherwise also where you have analyst roles and things like that, where you will be doing a certain amount of coding but it'll be less compared to a developer. So that's what I need you to list out in the third step. So this is your reflection phase where you will have to reflect on all of these 3 points, list them out so that you have an idea for the next two phases that we're going to do. If that's clear, the next one would be your research. Now, again, the reason why I said you need to take out at least 2 to 3 hours is because you need to do a lot of research. It's great to talk to people in the industry. It's great to have conversations with people in the industry that you're interested in. But again, everybody's only going to be able to tell you about their experiences or what they've done. And it's still, you would still have to do a certain amount of research for you to understand completely what is the role, what is that job description, what exactly goes into doing that role. And hence, you'd have to do quite an amount of research, right? Now, the roles that you want, that's the first question that you'll be answering. When I say the roles that you want, I mean a proper job role. Like you could say, I want to become a front end developer, a back end developer. You want to become a product lead, or you want to get into product management, or things like that. Now, of course, I don't expect everybody to know the roles that are available. It's okay if you don't. It's okay if you don't know, if you're interested in, in coding and programming, but you don't know what roles are actually there. That's perfectly okay. Give me 1 second. Yeah, sorry. So it's perfectly okay if you don't know the list of roles that you want, or the roles that are even there. That's why you've got to do your research. You have to go online, you have to check. There is a large amount of information available on the internet today, where there are detailed descriptions of everything that is available, and people even lay out plans on how they reached that point or how they achieved, how they got into that particular role. And that's what you have to read up and understand, and then list the roles that you want. Or if you already have an idea on the roles that you want, it's something that you've always had in mind, great, you can go ahead and list it out. You can have five, six, seven, how many ever you want. I would suggest at least having 3 to 4 roles as an option, not just one single role, right? Now, similar to the roles that you want, you'd have to list out the department or organizations that you want to work in. So when I say department or organizations, right, I mean in a company, especially like a product-based company, like I'm in Elucid now, we have a certain department for R&D where we mostly deal with the products. Then you have a department that is involved in the customer experience or the customization side of things. Then you have department for engineering. So which department do you want to get into? Which department is the one that interests you or excites you the most? Do you want to get completely into product, into R&D? Do you want to go into the customization side? Which would be the department that you want? Similar, of course, it will then match the roles that you want. They both will have to work together, right? So these are the two questions I would say you answer. This will take most of your time because you'll have to do a lot of research on what is available. What do you find interesting? You already know it, great, but it's good to further do research and understand it better because you are laying out a plan for your career, right? Next, and one of the last steps would be to review. So you've now done your reflection, you've reflected on everything that you feel you're good at, that this what interests you, what you haven't explored. You've gone ahead, done your research. Now you know, okay, so I have like these other 10 roles that interest me or 5 roles that interest me. This is the organization I want to get into. Now you need to review what you have and how we're going to move forward from this. So the first question you would have to answer is, what is the skills that you have? Now in each these skills will now have to be very particular to the role that you want in the organization that you want. Before I asked you to list the things that you're good at, that had everything that you felt that you're good at, everything over the last how many ever years that you felt that you've developed on and that you're good at and that you've learned. That's what you list there. But here, when I say what skills do you have, this would be very particular to the roles that you've listed. So when you do your research on the roles, you'll have a slight idea on the skills that would be expected. It can, even here, soft skills are important. It can be a leadership role, or it can be something that involves very good communication, because you should be able to communicate with the client on what their needs are and what they want. So not only would you put down again the programming languages or the frameworks or the technologies, you will also put down the soft skills that you have, that you feel that you're good at. Any level. It can be, let's say we're setting it from a range of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. Even if you have the skill of knowledge of just one, that's fine. You list it down. That's why we have the second step. So your second step is, what are my strengths? So as I said, let's say we're rating all your skills from 1 to 5, and we're saying 5 is the highest and 1 is the least, and you feel you're at a basic level, which is 1, and then you keep climbing up to the intermediate and then the higher levels. That way, if we're going to say you're at which are your strengths, it would be the ones that you feel maybe you're between a 3, 4, or 5. So these are what you feel are your strengths in all the roles, that in all the skills that you've listed out in step 1. So you said these are the skills I have. Now in these skills, these are what I feel are my top strengths that I am sure that I'm really good at or that I have experience in, right? Now comes your last and most important step. So previously you would have listed at least 5 roles, as I told you all, or it can be more than that. Now you would have to shortlist it to the top 3 roles for you, which you feel that would be the best fit for you, would is where your keen interest lies in. That's what you're going to have to do. So that would be the top 3 roles. Once you have your top 3 roles set, now you've got to understand how you want to move towards your goal. So your final goal is to reach this role. Once you reach the role, of course, you'll revise your career development plan. But for now, to reach that particular role, what will be your step towards it? What are the things you're going to have to do to reach that role? This, again, I will talk about in the next slide. Before that, do you need an education for that particular, to reach that particular role or to reach that particular goal? Do you need further education? When I say education, it does not have to be masters, it does not have to be only higher studies. It can also be the various courses that you're going to learn on your own, or other things that you're going to pick up on your own. That's what would cover on the various education that you would require on this. Now, there is one thing that I have to talk about, and it's called SMART goals. SMART goals is basically the reason I'm talking about SMART goals is I'm just going to give you what SMART would stand for. Uh, SMART basically stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So when you set a goal, there are certain things it has to cover. First thing would be it has to be specific. It has to be specific on what exactly you want. It cannot be vague. It can be just anything random. It has to be very specific on what you want. The next thing, it should be measurable. So you should have a clear mindset on how much of time you're giving yourself in terms of hours, in terms of weeks, in terms of days. That's what I mean by measurable. So you should be able to measure how long you're going to take to reach that particular goal. Attainable, again, it has to be a realistic goal. It has to be something that interests you. It has to be realistic. It should be something that's not too hard to achieve, not something where you have to start completely from the base and you don't know anything. So it has to be something that is attainable and has to be relevant in terms of what is your strengths, what are the skills you have, what is your dream job. It has to be relevant to that. Most importantly, it has to be time bound. So if you don't set a time limit, if you don't say, okay, so in the next 2 years, this is the goal I want to hit, then you will only keep pushing it on and you may not reach it in the amount of time that you want to. So it has to be time bound. You have to set a time bound, and that's when you revise your career development plans as you go. So that's again going ahead with it. It's reflection, research, and review. You answer a couple of questions there and you reach your final slide, which is your top 3 roles. Now, let's say you've got your top 3 roles. You know what your top 3 roles are, or even two, or let's keep it at two. Let's not go beyond two. Okay. So let's say you at least know your top 2 or your top 3 roles. What will you do further? Now, this is another method of understanding after you've shortlisted your top 3 roles. This is called the traffic light system. So the traffic light system, what it basically you're supposed to do is once you have your top 3 roles, let's say you want to become a data analyst or a data scientist, and another one is maybe a business analyst, or you want to get into a front end developer or back end developer, right? So what you'll do is you list down these top 3 roles, then you will go on the internet and you will search for job descriptions on these roles. There will be, you can take job descriptions for any company. You'll find it everywhere. You'll find it on websites like Glassdoor, etc. You'll also find it on the company website of the job description of that particular role. Uh, of course, they will list out a certain technologies that you will require, and they will also list out the certain soft skills that you require. It will be a quite detailed job description. So you'll take 2 to 3 or more of one particular role, and you list them out. Once you've put that down, you will highlight in red what you have no ex- yeah, sorry, what you have no experience in is what you will highlight in red. Okay, so what you have absolutely no experience in, you don't know that language at all, you don't know the framework at all, is what you'll highlight in red. Next, what you feel that you have experience in, you're good at it, you have you're if the job role states that you have to be self-driven, or you should be able to work in a team, or you should know Java, that's what you would say you have experience with. So you'll have to highlight that in green. And the last part will be what you feel that you have little experience in. This is something that you feel you're at a very basic level and you still need to develop on, that is what you'll highlight in yellow. So that's your traffic light. Red, green, and yellow based on your no experience, little experience, and have experience in. Once you do this, that's when you'll have an idea on what is the education or the courses that you'll need, and then how you're going to attain your goal. So then we'll be going back to the question on, okay, so I don't know Python, I don't know Java, or I have very little experience in Python and Java, and I need to then go ahead and do courses in it and further do projects in it. And that's how I build my experience so that I can reach the goal that I want to, and I can tick off everything in that particular job description or that job role. And that way you will be able to then apply and be in that particular job role or climb the ladder even once you get into your career. So that's basically the method that I've used, and something that's helped me deciding what I want to get into and where I stand right now. And of course, again, how much of time, now that I'm working, how much of time that I can give to learning new courses, to development, things like that. So this basically covers the career development plan that I would suggest you all can use. Use it to your best abilities and pick out whatever you think that works for you and what doesn't work for you. That's about the career development plan. I think we'll take questions for everything in the end. Yeah. Now, if the career development plan part was understood, I'm going to go a little bit into placement preparation. So, before I go into placement preparation, for today's placement preparation, I'm going to be talking more towards the IT side of things or to get into an IT company. It would not be, if there are people, of course, who are interested in maybe core EC or triple E or civil or mechanical, it varies from company to company. You may most of them have an aptitude and a verbal round. You will have a coding round. Of course, there you will have different languages that you'll have to know, but you will again have to, you can still use the resources that I'm going to show you all. You can still use the methods of learning, because in the end it's all about being able to learn and adapt and given a small amount of time. So you can still use all of this that I'm going to talk about, right? The first part I'm going to talk about is your aptitude quant and your verbal preparation. Now, in aptitude quant and verbal, of course, maybe your college or your university may have provided you with certain amount of training. If they've done that, great. If they've provided you with books or resources to learn, good. If you're somebody who has done a lot of preparation before and now you're just brushing it up for companies that are coming in, that's good as well. The two websites that I used was IndiaBix and Hit Bullseye. The reason I strongly recommend these websites is because you have a large amount of questions, different kind of questions, different kind of data available there, and with that large amount, it also helps you to practice. Now, if we're talking about the people who haven't practiced much or who haven't learned or done anything based on aptitude, quant, or verbal before, that's okay. But I would suggest when you start off, you'd start off by first understanding the concept, right? Because as much as practice helps in understanding different questions. Until and unless you know the concept or you know why that particular problem is solved that way, you will not be able to solve multiple problems. If you learn it as, okay, if they give me, let's say, a profit and loss problem and they give me this particular statement in this particular method, then that's how I solve it. And if the statement changes, that's how I solve it. Then when you get different questions, you will not be able to answer them because you haven't understood the concept. You're just going by, okay, that's what I'm going to do there, this is what I'm going to do here. So I would say that time you refer to YouTube channels, you have a large amount of YouTube channels. I will give you all a few that helped me. And in those YouTube channels, they will explain to you the concepts, they'll explain everything in detail. And then you can go on then to all of these websites where you have questions. They also have solutions. You can go to these questions, try to solve the questions on your own, see the answers you're getting, verify it with the way it's solved, pick up on new methods to solve. Of course, when it comes to aptitude, quant, and verbal, especially when you're sitting for companies, when you're sitting for their initial rounds, it's all about solving it in a certain amount of time frame. So there may be a longer methods that you would have learned on solving profit and loss problems when you were in school or in college, but now you'll have to use shortcuts, and that's the most important thing because you'll have to finish it in a certain time frame. So it's you have to, and that takes time to pick up on it, to learn it, to understand. It takes time, so you will have to prepare, you will have to give some amount of time to this. That's mainly about aptitude and quant. As far as I've noticed, most questions are based on data interpretation or profit and loss, or you have number-based questions. When I say number-based questions, it's like they give you a series of numbers and they ask you, so what is the missing number or what's the next number that should come? These are the kind of questions that I've mostly seen in most companies. When you sit for companies that do pool campus or that are off campus, that you don't usually come to campus, like you have Goldman Sachs or companies like that, they usually have a particular way of setting their tests. They will have different kind of questions. They have games that is completely based on your problem solving knowledge, and that's not something you usually find on these websites. So for that, I'd suggest is keeping up to date with YouTube channels. You have a large amount of YouTube channels now that literally tell you when the application has started, when it closes, what are the kind of questions that were asked previously, what are the questions that can be asked now, and they give you an idea on what questions to expect so that you don't go in blank, right? Companies like this usually have mostly game-based questions because they're more than your aptitude record. They also want to test your problem-solving skills. So even if you don't have, you know, you're not as good as your peers in Java or in C, it's okay. Is your problem solving skills good? Are you able to understand a problem and have a better solution to it than what somebody else would have given? That's what they're trying to test. So that's something you have to focus on. In verbal, particularly, I have noticed, I myself have done this where I feel like, okay, you know what? I'm talking every day. I'm sure I can do verbal. It's not a big deal. I don't need to sit and, read through and go through. But that, as much as you feel like you've learned English all this while and you know it, sometimes there are certain things that not all of us know. And that's why I would say it's very important that you go ahead and do exercise based on verbal, even if it's the basic stuff as prepositions. It is important. Only when you do it will you understand, okay, these are the mistakes I'm making. Things based on prepositions, synonyms, things like this are not stuff that we would have learned. It's just something we develop. So I would say go ahead, go to these websites and do exercises. It doesn't take a long time. Do exercises. That's when you'll know where you stand. One very important thing about verbal, especially in companies, is a lot of people will give you comprehensions, right? So it's basically a passage, a long passage, which can be either a story or it'll be based on something in the history, it'll be based on those kind of things. And then they give you a list of questions to answer. Now, what happens is usually when you're given a passage, how it works in a number of companies is they give you a passage, they ask you one question. You move on to the next question, it's a new passage, and there's a different question. So you have passage one, passage two. When you move on to the third question, you're again asked a question based on passage one. So you have read that, you've moved on to the second one, you've read the second one, you've forgotten what the first one is, now you've come to the third question, and it's just a question. Now you wouldn't remember what was in the first thing, and you'll have to waste time going back, reading the whole thing again, then coming back here. The only way to move ahead from this is by practice. The only way you can know this is practice. When you go on these websites, there are various other websites, whichever works best for you, that's great. But India Bix and Head Bullseye was something that had a large amount of data available, large amount of exercise available. So when you go there and when you practice being able to read a passage and grasp and mark the important points in it, the points that you know, that you once you know the kind of questions asked, you will automatically, when you read a passage, you'll automatically know, okay, these are usually questions that are asked on it. So these are the points that I have to keep in mind when I read a normal passage. That will help you in remembering and in answering a question quicker so that you don't waste time on going back. A lot of people finish aptitude and quant really fast and then they waste a lot of time on verbal and then they're not able to clear it. Because of course you're going to be graded, your marks are going to be added for all aptitude, quant, and verbal. So this is what usually happens, and that I would say requires practice. You have to sit, you have to get some time out and sit and do it during that amount of time. And of course doing practice tests really helps. It'll prepare you so that you're just trying out a few problems and leaving it. No, timing yourself, doing practice tests, that really helps in terms of when you actually sit for a company and that time you're timed, right? The next part is now mainly focusing on your coding run preparation. So if you're somebody who has had experience in other languages like C or Java, and you're familiar and you understand that better and you're comfortable with it, that's great. I would say stick to that language. If you're somebody who hasn't done anything in coding or programming and you're stepping into this completely new and you want to move into this field, then what I would suggest personally is to learn Python, because Python is, as everybody knows, one of the easiest programming languages to learn in today's age and day, because of the lesser number of syntax and various other reasons. But it's something that's very easy to learn and grasp on, and hence I would suggest if you're completely new to it, focus only on Python. Very few companies have restrictions on the languages they allow you to code. Most of the companies will tell you that you can code in any language that you want. Very few will say code only in Java and Python. Nowadays a lot of companies even allow Python. So I would say learn up Python. In Python, of course, you'll have a lot of concepts, but mostly concepts that are there in your that you'll use when you're coding would be related to list and dictionaries, as far as I've noticed or as far as I've used. So I would say learn up Python. Now, usually in a competitive scenario of coding round, the questions that you get is based on strings, data structures, and algorithms. This is something that is usually asked, is usually noticed. I've seen this most of the time, right? So you ask questions based on strings, data structures, and algorithms. Now, if you have no idea on what this is, if you're completely new to it, there are a few websites that is used most of the time. HackerRank, HackerOath, Geeks for Geeks. These websites are even used to give you your placement. Is given by the company when they want to take you around, when they want to prepare the exam. They use these websites itself to give you your questions and things like that. So your test is completely on this website. So why I suggest these websites for your coding round is because all HackerRank, HackerOath, and Geeks for Geeks. Under them, they have a certain based on the first. They'll have a division based on language. So they'll say Java, Python, C. Under Java, they list out all the concepts that are there. You can have dictionaries there. You can have data structures, algorithms. Then under that, they will list out the concepts. So they'll give you a brief idea on under data structures. You have trees. You have these are the kind of concepts that you have, and then they will show you related programs. Now, when you read data structure strings, the basic programs you all would have done, a reverse a string and things like that, that'll be the very basic. But when you come into the competitive side, there will be there would be a different way of them putting up a promise statement. Their promise statement will be something that's very related to your day-to-day activities. It'll talk about how one person has to travel from this area to that area, and this is the fare they're charging. How would you charge them? These kind of things. They want to see how you're going to apply the knowledge of data structures and algorithms for this particular problem. That's what your whole coding round is. Your problem statement and what is the solution you are designing for your problem statement. Of course, you all will know the basics of if and for and things like that. But the reason data structures is important and algorithms is important is because sometimes when you code just knowing the basics of if and for, you may use multiple if loops or multiple for loops or things like that. And that time it may take too long for your program to execute, and there it may show as fail to execute, right? Again, you lose out there, and then it shows, even though your logic may be right, you may be getting an answer, but it'll show fail to execute. That's because it's taken too long and it's not an optimized program. Whenever you're doing competitive programming or competitive coding, the most important part is to optimize your entire code and to be able to provide a good, better solution which is able to execute in a less amount of time. This is where data structures and algorithms comes in. So I would suggest going to these websites, going under data structure, first read. It'll not be like 2 to 3 pages long. It'll just be one page on what is the data structures that are there, what is the basic understanding of like a tree or a list or things like that. Then they will show you related questions to that particular data structure. They'll say for list, these are the kind of programming questions that you can get. Suggest that you try them out, you try programming them, you see whether you're able to clear all test cases, whether you're able to pass all test cases, and then you move on. That's completely why I suggest HackerRank, HackerOath, and Geeks for Geeks for coding around, because it does help. It really does work, and how you apply it is very, very important. And that again will only happen with practice. When you figure it out in one program, you'll be like, okay, so if that's how the program is framed or that's how the problem statement is structured, I can use a list, or I can use an array, or I can use this kind of a tree. And how you're going to apply, let's say you have a binary tree and you've learned the basic program on how to traverse a binary tree. Everybody knows that. But when you get a problem statement, it will not give you directly how you're going to traverse the binary tree. It will have it in a different manner, and you've got to be able to relate both the concepts. That's what I'm trying to say here. This is mainly about your coding round. Now, the most important I feel is your interview preparation, because I've seen a lot of people, they're able to get through the first aptitude and quant. They're able that too in today's world where everything is usually virtually. Everybody's able to get through the aptitude and quant round. They're able to get through your coding round, but interview is where they lack. Interview is where they're not able to put across what they have learned and what they've understood, and this is where companies also are focusing on now. There is usually different companies have different ways of interviewing, of course, but mostly you have a technical round and a HR round. This is a common thing that is seeing in most companies. You have a technical round, you have a HR round, and sometimes, like my personal experience in Elucian, I was told that I have a technical round and a HR round, but it so happened that I had two technical rounds. The HR round was not taken by anybody from the HR, but it was taken by one of the senior managers who asked me, of course, a few basic questions, and then we went into it completely technical, right? Now, what you can expect in a technical round is mainly, firstly, there may be a few companies that will again ask you to code. So they will have a question put up, and while you are on either your, if you have a face-to-face interview, great, or while you are on a virtual platform like Zoom, that time they will ask you to code, and they will see how long you're taking, whether you're able to understand the problem statement, whether you're able to clear at least a few test cases, right? Sometimes you may not be able to clear a few test cases, you may be tensed, but if your logic is correct, if there are minute errors, they are able to understand. Even they are working, they've also been through the whole interview process, so they're really able to understand, okay, he or she is able to actually understand what the prompt statement is. They've clearly understood what is the requirements, and they are trying to give a good solution, right? The next thing you can expect in a technical round, the next most important thing um, you can expect in a technical round is they usually have riddles or mind teasers or word problems that are asked. I have seen this in a few companies that I sat for, where when I say mind teasers or riddles, it'll be worded problems. So they'll ask you questions like, let's say one person has 10 chocolates and one of them is defected, and you have a weighing scale. How are you going to find out which is the defected chocolate? These kind of questions are what is there, and examples of this are available all over the internet. Geeks for Geeks has a lot of examples for this. Tutorial Point and Java Point has a lot of examples of these, and it's great to refer to them. It will, you'll at least know how these questions are asked and how at that point you'll have to figure out a solution, right? That's one of the things that's asked in the technical round. Next, of course, you're asked completely technical based questions. These questions again are mostly based on algorithms, data structures, and OOPS concepts. No doubt they will ask you questions on these, but what happens here is they want to know how much you've understood, whether you've actually understood the concept, or you've just, mucked up a program on a list program and you're just pasting it on over there, or you've actually understood that that's how a list works. That's how I'm going to delete parts of it. That's how I'm going to add more if I want. If you've actually understood what's the base of the concept and how you will apply that concept onto a problem, that's what they want to understand in data structures and algorithms. Now, when you go online and when you go online and when you search for interview questions, you will find a large amount of interview questions on algorithms, data structures. Sometimes you can even search for interview questions based on the company itself. That's great. But if you're somebody who has no idea, you've not really done algorithms or data structures ever before, you don't know anything about it, and when you go search for interview questions, you're not going to understand anything. It'll just be like, okay, so if that's the question, that's what I'm going to mug up and I'm going to move on. You're not going to be able to understand. So I would say take out the time and go on to websites like Tutorial Point and Java Point. That's what I used. And here you have one section, of course, you have where they have only interview questions, and then you have another section where they talk about each concept. It will not be very long, it will not be in paragraphs. It's not like your textbook where you have just paragraphs and paragraphs. It will be short answers, it will be clear understanding of the concept in very, very simple language, not using the high tech words. It'll be very simple language. What is a list? What is a tree? Why are you traversing the tree? What is the logic there? How do you traverse the tree? What are the different nodes? Those kind of things. I would suggest you go ahead, understand the concept. If you understand the concept, you won't even have to look at the interview question, because once you understand the concept, whatever your interview question is, however they turn your interview question, you know the concepts. You're still going to be able to explain what you've understood. Next, of course, is your OOPS concepts. Irrespective, if you tell them, I know only Python, I don't know Java, they're still going to ask you OOPS concepts. OOPS concepts is there everywhere. So you have to have your OOPS concepts clear. Examples in OOPS concepts, very important. You should be able to relate what you've learned to a real life example. That's when you know that you've understood it well. That's when your interviewer knows that you've understood it well. That's one thing that I would suggest. Now, usually in your technical round, it's easy to get worried when you don't know an answer. It's easy to get scared where you feel like, okay, I couldn't answer that one question. You know what? It's done. I don't know. I don't think they're gonna take me. Things like that. It's completely normal to feel that way. But one thing I must tell you, especially with my experience in a number of interviews, is that usually interviewers are just looking to see your interest, and if you have the urge or the if you want to learn, that's what they want to see. They don't usually expect you to have knowledge of all the programming languages or everything that they've put on their job description. You have to have basic knowledge on at least one or two of them, but if you don't have knowledge on everything, that's okay. They want to see if you have the ability to learn, if you have the ability to grasp on concepts, grasp on the understanding of a concept. That shows that when you get into their company, once you're accepted into their company, irrespective of what they place in front of you, you will be able to learn it and you will be able to move forward, right? So there are, even when I sat for Elosian, we all were interviewed with the same kind of questions, the same technical round, whether you're from EC or from CSC or from ISC, everybody was given same set. Almost all of us were asked the similar questions in the technical round, mostly based on data structures, but not all of us are in the same roles now. I'm in a developer role, another person may be in an analyst role where he or she doesn't have to do a lot of coding, but I am into a more programming coding based. So what they wanted to see that time is, do you have an interest to learn? Do you want to learn more? Are you able to learn within a certain amount of span of time? That's what they want to see. So don't get worried, don't get worked up of, oh god, I couldn't answer that one question, it's gone. No, they also have been interviewed at some point in their life, and they also understand the pressure, and they also understand what where you stand. And of course they would have seen your resumes, they would have seen what your skills are, what your projects are, and they would have already had an idea on what you can and can't do. And they just want to see how well you're able to portray yourself, how well you're able to communicate everything that you've learned and all the hard work that you've put in, right? That's mainly about your technical round. Moving into the HR round. Now, HR round, of course, with me, a few interviews I had the HR taking it. Few interviews I had it became more of a technical round. But the interviews that when they say HR round, there are certain questions that you will be asked for sure. Even though they have your resume in front of them, they are going to say introduce yourself because they want to see how you're going to introduce yourself. And of course, I would suggest not going, with just not doing any research and just going blank and saying, I know about myself, so I'm just going to go say, hi, this is my name and this is what I'm doing, and end it. There are a number of templates on questions like introduce yourself or where do you see yourself in 5 years. And you cannot mug up another person's template. You cannot mug up another person's answer. That's the worst thing to do because you'll forget what you're saying or you'll contradict what you're saying at some point in the interview. It's always good to read through templates, read through the way people format their answers, the way it's formatted on the internet, and then you put down your own list of points that you want to cover. If you're somebody who is not good at speaking or who gets very scared, who's not good at public speaking and things like that, it's great to write a complete answer down so that you know, okay, these are the points I want to cover. If you're somebody who's confident, okay, I can do it, then it's good to list out just points. Say, okay, I need to talk about my project, I need to talk about my strengths, I need to talk about my education, and that's it. And my interests. So okay, so those are the 5 points I have to mentally remember, those are the 5 points I have to cover, and you start talking about yourself. Mostly these questions should not, it's better if they don't exceed more than a minute or two, because then it just gets too long. You're gonna bore the interviewer. It's better if you keep it short, crisp, tell them exactly what you want to convey and finish with it. They don't want to hear your entire life story on how you started and everything. No, they just want a short, crisp answer on what you've done and where you are right now. Right? So I would suggest it's good to go through a few HR round questions like where do you see yourself in 5 years, or why do you want to, especially because I'm from EC and I was getting into the IT side of things, I was always asked, why are you moving into this direction? Why didn't you take CSC in the beginning? And those are kind of questions that you can expect, and that answer should be a completely honest answer. Should be something that why you actually are moving into this. What was your uh, interest in this? When I took up electronics and communication, I decided, I think 2 years into it, I decided that I had more liking towards programming and getting into that side of things. Of course, we had coding and programming in EC too, in terms of VLSI and all of that. But I wasn't that interested in that side of things. I wanted to go mainly into different technologies. I wanted to get into data analysis and data science, and hence I started preparing from then on, and that's how I was able to get a good enough job. It's okay if you haven't started preparing. If you've just started, now is when you realize that you want. That's okay, as long as you're willing to give the time to sit and prepare. It's fine, right? The most important thing I would say for your entire interview preparation would be to read interview experiences, especially when you're sitting for the big companies, right, who do mass recruitment or who have pool campuses. uh, Goldman Sachs, again, as an example. It's great to read what experience other people have had, what kind of questions other people have been asked, because most of the time you will have a similar set of questions. You may have a similar experience. You'll at least know what to expect. Geeks for Geeks has interview experience of a large amount of people all over the net. It is easy to get overwhelmed when you read it and feel like, okay, I may not be able to answer it. It's okay if you can't answer all the questions. Certain basic questions, certain questions on mind teasers and word problems and things like this. It's good if you know how to answer it. It's good if you, as much as you read questions available, you may not get the exact same question, right? But at least if you understand the concept on how they're solving it, or what is the logic that's going behind solving it, you will be able to solve other problems. So I would suggest it worked for me. If it doesn't work for you, that's okay. Don't go through interview experiences. But what worked for me is going through various interview experiences, so I know, okay, these are the kind of questions I'm going to be asked. These are the kind of things that I have to put ahead, right? One very important thing is when you're applying for different jobs, right? And each job has different roles in it. I would suggest altering your resume to that particular job or to that particular role. There may be a number of courses that you would have done, but some of these courses are not relevant at all to the job role that you're applying. You may have done a course completely based on, let's say, your EC, and you did a course based on resistors and digital electronics that side, but it's not it, and you're trying to apply for a developer role. No connection at all. You don't have to list that. You can remove that from your resume. But if you have to give a predefined resume, that's what your college asks for, that's also okay. But something that I would suggest is altering your resume such that it fits that particular job role, so that when an interviewer goes and he reads your resume, it's all to the point. He ticks off everything that is required, and he's able to move ahead faster and able to interview you better. Yeah. So that's mostly about interview preparation and how you'll have to prepare for your interview. Other than this, all I want to say, I mean, I'm done with my presentation now, but all I want to say is what has really, really worked for me through this entire process, whether it was in college or even for interview preparation or even now when I'm working, is setting a timetable. Setting a timetable, setting goals is something that is very important. When you're in a competitive environment and you have a large number of people who are sitting and applying for the same job as you, if you're not going to have set a certain amount of time every day, or however it works for you, alternate days, every days, weekends, where you're going to give a certain dedicated amount of time to work on that particular part, either aptitude, quant, verbal, interview preparation, or just coding for 1 or 2 hours. If you're not going to be able to do that, it will be difficult to reach your end goal. Only when you set a certain amount of time, work on timetables, that's when you will have a clear idea on what you want to do, where you stand, and how much of time you will require to go ahead and sit for that particular company. When you're going through campus placements, you will have companies coming in continuously, and you'll only get to know, maybe worst comes to worst, you'll get to know maybe a week before the company is coming in. They'll mail you and they'll tell you, okay, so in a week is going to be your exam. If that time you're going to sit and study for it, no, that's going to be difficult, because you never know, you may have others in between. If you set out a plan, you set out, okay, 1 hour every day, 2 hours every day, this is how much of time that I'm going to give, and that's, I'm going to complete these topics. Then when a company comes in and they tell you, okay, you have a week, that time you do practice tests. That's the time to do practice tests and mock tests and understand Okay, so I've prepared all of these. These are my practice tests and mock tests. Am I able to finish it in the given amount of time? Will I be able to perform well in my final coding round or aptitude round and so on? That's something that I strongly recommend and would suggest you all attempt to do it if you all have never done it before. It will work out to a certain extent for sure. Yep. I think I've covered everything as much as I had planned. I am open to any questions you all have.
Thank you so much, Anushka. Various people have sent questions. I'm going to just send them in the chat box.
Okay.
Okay, before that, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So, yeah, thank you, Anushka, for your great presentation. So, my question is, how do you manage both the college and the placement preparation together? Because you know there will be a lot of, especially if you're at a VTU, you know how's it.
Yes.
So, how do you think you can manage both?
Okay. So most of y'all are going to be in your final year, or y'all have already passed out. But if y'all are in your final year, and you will have, firstly, if you're in your final year, you'll have lesser number of subjects. Okay, that's something that's very important. But I know it gets difficult when you're having online learning, when you're off, when your all your classes are online, because then you get up at 8 and then you have classes till 4, and then you're just tired of sitting in front of the screen. I know that can be difficult, but that's why I said setting a timetable is very important, and that again has to be how it works for you. So if you feel okay, from 8 to 4 I am just sitting with classes, as much as whether you're listening to the class or not, 8 to 4 is the time that you're setting aside for classes. You will not be able to listen to a class and do aptitude and quant on the side over here. So set that time. Say, okay, 8 to 4 is my timing for college. That's my set time for college. After that, you may or may not have assignments. You may or may not have quizzes. That is a given. You will have that. Set 1 hour. You want to finish all of that. Then you set another 1 hour every day where you will set certain number of topics. Let's say Monday you want to set 1 hour and you're going to put uh, only all the quant topics that you want to complete. But if um, if that's not working for you, if you feel like you feel less productive during the week, I would suggest to try to complete most of your college work during the week and use the weekends to prepare completely for your placements, or alternate days. So one day, alternate days, you'd focus completely on college work, the other day you completely focus on your aptitude and quant. That is, setting a timetable will help, but how what works for you is something that will happen only to trial and error. Once you set it, once you understand, okay, I'm not able to focus, I'm not able to concentrate, I'll have to push it to another day. Oh, that's what I would say in my experience.
Yep, that works. Thank you.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and try to answer a few questions that Divyashri has put on the chat.
I think I
When
can call it out for you because it's quite a number of questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is, what's the right time to start for your paper placement preparation in terms of
Okay.
aptitude, quant, and verbal?
Now, of course, if you're in your final year, you may be a little late because companies have already started applications and they've already opened up job roles. You may be a little late, and but that's okay. You have to start right away for sure. But if you're somebody maybe who's in the second year, and or sorry, if you're in the third year and you're not in your final year yet, then you have a good amount of time. And since you have a good amount of time, I would say again, put down a timetable and start as early as possible, because it gives you a kickstart and it becomes easier when you start applying for companies and for jobs. Even if you in your third year or your fourth year you're trying to do internships and things like that, it will help you. Your aptitude and quant that you prepare now, the coding that you prepare now, will help you even land an internship. So there's never a good time or a bad time to start. The earlier you start, the better for you. If you're late, that's okay. You've just got to put in a little more effort and start at some point. You just got to start at least. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question would be, how to find an internship in the third year?
Okay, how to find internships in third years? The way I mostly got my internship was, of course, going onto platforms like Intershala and various other platforms that you have. Another method was keeping in touch with people in the industry, right? um, Keeping in touch with people in the industry is very important. It can be through your parents if you know somebody, or just being a part of various clubs and various, you will have a lot, your colleges usually have a lot of talks where they invite people from the industry. That time you stay in touch with them, you contact them, you ask them that. The next most important method which really really works is LinkedIn. Building your LinkedIn profile is very very important, and using LinkedIn to get internships is also very important. um, how you do that again is you start by building your LinkedIn profile, you put out everything that you're good at there, and then you start searching for internships. So LinkedIn really helps, and it's great to start building your LinkedIn profile and making connections with different people in the industry that you're interested in.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's an excellent way to do it, and I would suggest adding on to that. Please don't be picky on LinkedIn. Uh, Try and connect to as many as you can. Moving on, what are EC students a big disadvantage to the IT jobs?
You may feel like it's a big disadvantage because we've all been through that. I was an EC student, sat for an IT job. There were many jobs that weren't even allowing EC students to sit. It was only for CSC and ISC. But I did sit for LOCN and I did get selected with a couple of people who were from CSC and ISC, and I got shortlisted along with them. So it may be a, it's going to be a disadvantage if you're not going to prepare for it. You have to understand that you will have to put in a little extra amount of effort than somebody who's in the CSC background or ISC background, because the things that data structures and algorithms is something that's in their curriculum. They would have learned it, they would have had experience in it, they would just have to brush up on it. But you have to learn that from the base again and completely new. So it's not a big disadvantage if that's where your interest lies. If that's what you want to do, then you learn towards it and you move towards it. Now companies do, interviewers and companies do have an understanding. They do understand that an EC student may not know as much as a CSA IC student does. Again, there what they were looking for mainly, even in my case, I was told this by my interviewer, that we're mainly looking if you're interested in learning, how well you were able to, even though you had to learn data structures and algorithms on your own, no teacher sat and taught you, you did not write an exam on it, nothing, you learned it on your own. How well you're able to grasp a concept, how much of time and how much of hard work are you putting into learning that. So if your interest lies there, then yes, go ahead with it.
Thank you. So, adding on to that question, I'll take this question which says one of our participants has been selected as technical intern at Elysium and would want to know about the working culture, role, and future guidance in the company, and how do they clear, and how many more doubts which I would like to clear. Okay, so basically the work culture and role.
Okay, I'll just give you a little short brief, but if there's somebody specific to Elucin, I think y'all can mail me and I'll take that question up in detail there, because I don't think everybody here is from Elucin. But if y'all are still looking to apply to Elucin, if there's anybody who isn't, y'all can go ahead and apply on LinkedIn. They have job roles still open. The work culture is very good. I'm not just saying that because I'm in the company. It is a very good, it's a very cooperative work culture there. You are appreciated for the work that you do, and the thing is, in Elucin they usually take internships and then they move on to give you a conversion. And the reason they take an internship where you're put into different teams is for them to understand which would be the best fit for you. So in your internship you may be working in a different team, they'll see how well you're able to understand, how well you're able to communicate, how you get adjusted to the corporate life, and then they put you into that particular uh, based on that and based off reviews from your mentor. You're assigned a mentor, you're assigned a manager, somebody who will constantly be there with you for 3 months. They give you a large amount of opportunities there where they allow you to present your projects, present your work, various things to pull you out of your shell. And even after you get converted, the work culture is really really good, and you have a lot of opportunities there to climb the ladder, and they encourage climbing the ladder both ways. When I say both ways, it's not only just going to higher roles where you just want to become the manager one day, it's also learning various other technologies and moving to different points in your company itself. Moving into, you can be a test engineer and then you may want to get into become a developer, you have the opportunity to do that, absolutely. So, if you all have any other questions in particular of Elucin, you can always mail me. My mail ID is right there. I will
Yeah.
answer that better.
Thank you. The next question would be qualifications to get a 10 lakh package or above.
Okay. Now, one very important thing I will tell you out of course, personal experiences. The package, of course, looks very good when you say 10 lakh, 13 lakh, 15 lakh. Great. But you need to first know what interests you. I cannot tell you what the qualifications will be for a 10 lakh package until and unless I know what job you're looking for, what job description you're looking for. You can want a 10 lakh package in a core ECE company, or you may want it in an IT company. In an IT company, you may want it for a, a developer role or an analyst role. So I cannot tell you the exact qualifications you require. It would completely be dependent. First, you've got to understand what is the job that you're interested in, what is the field that you're interested in. Look for the job roles. That's when the minute you find your job roles, you'll automatically find job descriptions and the qualifications that you require. And it's okay if you don't pick out everything, if you don't know all of, if they have like a list of 5 to 6 technologies and you don't know everything, that's okay. At least if you know 3 to 4, you have basic knowledge, great. If you're able to communicate that well, good. That's what I'd say.
Thank you. Next question would be, can we get off campus placements?
Yes, absolutely you can. But one thing you've got to understand with off campus placement is you're competing with a very, very large amount of people. It may be uh, uh, completely in India, or it may be completely in Bangalore, completely in Karnataka. And that time it gets more and more competitive. And that's why usually when they have off campus or when they have full campus, they have a different way of asking. They don't ask the basic aptitude questions. They usually have these games and these problem solving skills, questions that you may not even expect. So I'm not saying it's difficult. You can get into an off campus placement, no doubt. I have seen people and heard of people who have got into it. But of course, the amount of effort, and if that's what you're aiming for, then you will have to alter your studying methods and what you're studying and what you're preparing on based on those companies. They will have a different set of questions, they will have a different set of requirements from you, and you will have to alter that.
Thank you again. So I think we have one last question, which asks about how to approach a company for job in the core ECE domain, as well as do we need to have strong command on programming languages?
Okay. Now, how to approach a job in a core EC company? As far as I've heard, and initially when I was talking to a lot of people from the industry, when you're looking for a job in a core EC company, the roles that you usually get, it's a very slow method to climb up the ladder in a core EC company. You usually get research roles. You wouldn't. It's mostly research roles that you get. Few companies may or may not give you. Most of the companies give you a research role that you have. How to approach a company? Firstly, companies will core EC companies may be open for jobs. A second thing would be LinkedIn. Trust me, LinkedIn is like the holy grail. You will find everything there. But you will have to take initiative. Nobody's going to come and put it on a platter for you. You will have to go ahead there. Search for people in the companies that you're interested in. They may put up various job opportunities on LinkedIn. You They may not put up. You may know somebody. You may know a connection. It's great to drop a message. That's perfectly okay. Drop a message on LinkedIn itself saying, hey, these are my interests, so on and so forth. Since I'm talking about LinkedIn, another important thing I'd like to mention about LinkedIn is when you apply for jobs through LinkedIn, and if you get rejected, unfortunately, you get rejected for the particular role that you apply for, you will get a mail where the talent acquisition person or whoever it is will send you a mail saying, sorry, but you were not a correct fit for the role. It's always good to drop a mail where you tell them, these are the skills that I have, and if you, of course, frame it better, but these are the skills that I have, and if you suggest that whether I would be a fit for any other role or any other opportunities in your company. That is a great way to reply to them, because they may have other roles that you don't know about that may fit exactly the interests and the languages and the skills that you have learned and you've understood till now. And that's a good way to reply to them and get a better job. You never know. Do you need to have a strong command on programming language? If it's required, yes, especially core EC companies will mostly require C and embedded, as far as I'm aware. But when I say you have to have a command and programming language, it's more of problem solving, right? Nobody's saying you should be able to solve the toughest problem in Java or something. They're not going to give you a test every day in the company saying these are the five programs, please, complete it. It's more of problem solving logic that they want to understand. So even if you have very basic understanding in C or in embedded and things like that, but you have a good problem solving knowledge, you have a good grasp on that's the problem statement, understanding the problem statement, how it's given to you, and being able to think of potential solutions. That's what they're mainly looking at in any company that you go to, any job that you go to. Your problem solving skills is very important, and that's something you can develop through coding and programming, of course.
Thank
Yeah.
you. But before we go to the next question, I would like to have an add-on on what you said.
Yeah.
So basically, core EC companies don't tend to take freshers who just come out of college. There are different aspects which they look into. One, if you get it through your college, very good. That's the easiest way through it. Second, if they don't get, like, if your colleges don't bring much of an EC companies and you're trying it on your own, it's suggested you have a training. So there are many training institutes based on what you want. So I was looking for VLSI and embedded and stuff like that. So you have 6 months to 4 months, or it is very flexible. You have Saturday, Sunday courses, or you have over the week based on if you're working or if you're still studying, such as that. So on that, if you have a training, you have a upper level when compared to freshers walking out from their fourth year of engineering. And there are also a few examinations which tend to hire people. So these are the three aspects I would like to touch on before we go to the next question. If you're looking for a core ECE job, sorry,
Um,
and yeah.
just one more question, and thank you for answering. One thing is how many domains are there in EC job? Like, is there only like research and VLSI, or are there few more domains that are present, but I might not be aware of?
No, there is
Like
a
one
lot.
example.
We cannot say that there is only two domains or three domains. There are multiple companies working on core EC. So it's not that you have only a research analyst there working, or you have only a manager working there. There are n number of roles based on the experience, based on the level of knowledge. I would suggest you get into like LinkedIn and stuff where you get to the company profile as stated by Anushka, and you will find various roles. So even when I was applying, I think I was looking for it, but Cadence had a number of roles. So you as fresher can apply to as many as roles you can in terms of your qualifications or what you know in that domain, but it is not specific to either just one role. Honestly, there is a vast field waiting outside for you, so I think you should explore a little more.
Yeah, just adding on to that, when we say research itself, we're just talking about generally, right? You can get, when we talk about EC, you can get into 5G. Rashmi is into 5G now. You can get into the VLSI side of things. There are various domains. Of course, I may not have a knowledge of everything, and that's why I say you have to do the research and you have to understand what you are interested in. But there is no restriction. There's no only, these are the two, three domains that, no, there are a lot available. Do your research, understand it, then go on to LinkedIn and find the companies that you're interested in. You just go onto LinkedIn and you search for it, you may not understand it completely. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have one last question, which says one of our participant is a technical intern at a software company. Would it be difficult to adapt in the internship?
Okay. Uh, as far as I've seen and as far as I've heard of other people in other internships too, absolutely not. Um, when you go in for an internship, especially when it's on a basis of internship and then conversion, everybody's treated at the same level, right? So they set a very basic level for everybody. Usually, you are mentored. When I say mentored, it's not going to be like college where they'll, sit and give you quizzes or say complete this course. No, it'll they will expect you to learn on the job and continue to also contribute to the product or the job or the whatever you're working on at that point. And it will not be difficult to adapt, it will be easy. It'll be, I'm not going to say it's very easy. Of course, you're doing an internship. It's something that you've not been on, and that you've not really been in, but it will not be very, very difficult to adapt to it. It's not going to be a very big task just because you're from EC and somebody else from CSE. Not at all. They may be in CSE and they may know Java and Python, but the language that they get assigned to in the internship will be completely different. So again, they may have to learn. Similarly, for you, what you have to understand is when you get into an internship and when they give you a certain job, you will have to learn certain things on your own from the base all over again. So be ready to learn. That's it. And then you won't find it difficult. If you think you're supposed to know everything and then go into, then it's going to be a little difficult. So I would ask Rashmi to answer the EC based questions. By the way, Rashmi was the previous chair of IEEE, and we both passed out together, and she went into the EC domain. So I would want her to take the EC questions. She'll answer it better.
Thank you. For getting internship in same like core company, do we have to approach company in the same way or as full-time job in a company, or there is some other way to approach for an internship? Internships, I would prefer you have some references, because getting internships directly through uh, college or something is quite hard because they focus on the IT domain. If you get an internship in a core company, try and become a full-time employment. And no, I didn't get your question very well. Do you want to get into an internship or do you want to get into a job?
No, how we approach a company, like how just like you told that how you approach a company for EC core job. So just for an example, if I want to get into, a VLSI kind of internship as well, where I
Hmm.
can explore related to fabrication and all.
Hmm.
So how should we approach? Like they also
So
need some sort of qualifications before that. So
yeah, so basic qualifications, what they expect from you is obviously to know your VLSI basics. So, as I told you, if you want to get in, like if you're passed out, uh, that is after your fourth year, when if you're looking for something, then they expect you to have a little more training. They get into like the basics and stuff where you need proper problem solving, and they test a lot of things. So you don't have the tendency to know all of that as a graduate as such. So that's why it is recommended to have a training, because companies believe you blindly when you have a training. They say, okay, someone's already invested 6 months of their time in molding you into something what you have. So that way it's easier to get. But as an intern, I would say LinkedIn is what you should look at right now. There are n number of companies out there in the LinkedIn which asks for zero experience. Zero experience would mostly be your internship period. So get into that and check on, like, type out keywords, or if you have any company in specific, type out them and look for the job roles. So when you open a job role, you get to know of what do you say, you get to know the requirements, or get to know what you need. So most of the internship things won't be that complicated. They'll ask you for basic problem solving or basics of VLSI or signals or something like that. So with that, you can apply. And the best way is through references or through contacts into the industry. That way you get better opportunities. But other websites like Naukri.com or Intershala is also open. I haven't explored that, but you can.
So Rashmi, like you mentioned about the training, could you
Mm.
give an example about the training? Also, like in what, like during what period of our engineering do we get that training? Like in third year or fourth year, or like that.
Okay, so I was pretty late to it, honestly. So I've looked at it right now. I should have looked at it pretty earlier. So, but I would say third year is the best span to look at it, because you will get introduced to VLSI or embedded or CC, and at that span, and you will know a little on what it is, whatever theoretical concepts the video covers or anything as such. So once you know that, getting a hands-on and getting the lab experience or getting a proper industry knowledge of that would be very helpful. So there are courses. So I believe for VLSI, I've checked in, but I have not checked in for the others. So VLSI, there's One in Jayanagar, there's one called Chip Solutions, I believe, and one more called RV VLSI. These are some reputed institutes, and there are online courses. I found one through Talent Sprint, which is with collaboration with IISc. So there are many in trainings, but I would prefer you have someone who can guide you in it. So maybe your professor, or if you know someone from the industry. So once you look into a training, you'll obviously have your brochure and stuff like that. So give it to a person who knows it and tell them, is this enough for me, or will I have, what experience will I get? Because there is a front end version of it, there's a back end version of it. People into the front end again get into coding and stuff as such, and in the back end you get into like the proper chip designing, layout and stuff. So you will get exposed to all this a little in your academics, but that is very less when you're looking for what you need in the industry. So such trainings mold you to be there. So I would say look for trainings, look for, you can just literally Google search saying VLSI training courses for 6 months or 4 months or based on all of that, and then you can check the syllabus they cover. If you find it good enough, go ahead.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Rashmi. There is another question. It says, how can a MCA final year student get an off campus internship with a job? What's the right way to approach companies?
Anushka can take it.
An off-campus internship with a job. Of course, you'll have your on-campus, but if you want an off-campus with wherever, whatever you're applying for, whether you're an MCA final year student or anything, uh, getting a job is firstly approaching companies. I would suggest, if you don't have, or if you don't know anybody, or if you aren't talking to a lot of people in the industry, would be to use places like LinkedIn. But staying in touch with people in the industry and building connections with people in the industry is very important. That helps you. They will be able to refer you, they will be able to connect you to other people, and you have to start somewhere building connections in the industry. If you can't do it because of you don't know anybody else, LinkedIn is the best place again, because there you'll have a lot of people, and they will be open, they'll be okay to you literally dropping a message there onto their LinkedIn, telling them, hey, this is what I do, and do you all have any openings or things like that.
Okay, so I think all the questions are done. Uh, does anyone have any other question? If
If
not,
there's anything about, sorry, if there's anything about Elucian, you can absolutely mail me, because I'll answer you better there. I don't want to bore everybody, but Elucian, you can go ahead and mail me. If there's anybody who wants to apply to Elucian, I'm sure they're still open. You can go on LinkedIn and apply to them. Yeah.
okay, so I am going to go ahead with the vote of thanks. Firstly, please fill in the feedback form. It will help us improve for the next events. Now, as we have come to the end of this wonderful and very insightful webinar, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to Ms. Anushka. Thank you so much for making time during these hectic schedules. The entire webinar made us view all our career choices in a whole new perspective. This webinar surely forms a base for deciding our path. Thank you for enlightening us about all the various steps in this important phase of our life. Next, I'd like to thank all the attendees. Thank you for your presence and thank you for your wonderful questions. A big thank you to my amazing Execom team. Thank you for helping all of us to conduct this event in a very smooth manner. We have a few more events coming up as IEEE Day is approaching soon. So follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn, and you can follow us on all our social pages. And we have a few more technical webinars, and so stay tuned for that. Again, thank you all for being such a delightful audience. Last thanks to Rashmi also. She also answered various questions about EC jobs. Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you, everyone. Please make sure to fill the feedback form.